I'm Dan Friedman. I'm one of the co-conveners of Performing the World and the artistic director of the Castillo Theater. I want to welcome you to the first plenary of Performing the World 2010. It's called Theory, Practice, Culture and Psychology, Therapy and Theater. Now, I know that's something of a tongue twister and a mind bender of a title, but what we're here to talk about is the varied ways there are to see the relationship between theory and practice. Now, why is that important? Well, those of you who were at opening reception on Thursday might remember that Dr. Lois Holzman, one of our executive producers, who is also on the panel with us, said that Performing the World was born out of a response to an embodiment of the performance movement that's emerging all over the world. And while we all share a common set of progressive social and political values, and we're all committed to performance as a means of growth and development, beyond that, what do we have in common? What are our differences? The performance movement is spreading in wealthy countries and in poor, in rural areas and in urban, in traditional cultures and in modern. And there's no one way to introduce performance and theater and play into our societies in a developmental way. No common approach we necessarily all agree on. There are many variations depending on the specifics of culture and history in every nation and part of those nations. What we want to do with this conversation is explore those differences, not to use those differences to push ourselves apart, but to understand our differences as a way of building together and creating something new and getting closer. So first of all, I just want to say how excited and honored I am to be moderating a panel of such distinguished and innovative artists, psychologists, educators, and activists. I'm going to introduce each one of the panelists very briefly, and by necessity, my introductions now will be brief and primarily for the purposes of identification. In the course of the discussion, you'll get to know each of them, I hope, in a much deeper way. So I was going to do it in alphabetical order, but I'll do it from my left. We'll go down the row. So sitting next to me is Judith Malina. And from that response, I realize she doesn't need much of an introduction. You all know her. She's a co-founder with Julian Beck and artistic director of the Living Theater, which is the longest producing ensemble in New York and America's oldest experimental political theater. The Living Theater, as many of you know, has toured all over Europe and other parts of the world and has played a profound impact on the development of avant-garde theater over the last 60 years. Sitting next to her is Patch Adams. Again, no introduction seems necessary. Patch is obviously a clown. He's also a medical doctor. He's brought his clowning performance of care and love to literally hundreds of thousands of children and adults all over the globe. He's the director of the Gesundheit Institute in West Virginia, which is the future home of the Patch Adams Teaching Center. Sitting next to Patch is Woodie King. Again, many of you seem to know Woodie, and you should. He is the founder and producing director of the New Federal Theater, which was founded in 1970 and specializes in African American and other minority drama, supports emerging playwrights, and has brought many, many African American theater artists to national attention while bringing the joy of live theater to New York City's minority communities. Next to him is Lois Holzman. Lois is the founder and the main organizer of Performing the World. She is the co-founder with Fred Newman and director of the Eastside Institute for Group and Short-Term Psychotherapy, which for 30 years has functioned as an independent research, training, and organizing center at the forefront of new approaches to human development, learning, therapeutics, and community building. And next to Lois is Andrew Burton. Andrew is the founder and the artistic director of Street Spirits Theater Company, which is a nonprofit, youth-driven social action theater company based in British Columbia, Canada. It creates live performances, workshops, and videos on social issues facing poor and working class communities. And at the end of our aisle, last but certainly not least, is Fernanda Liberali. Yes. Thank you. Fernanda is a professor and a researcher at the Pontific Catholic University in São Paulo, Brazil, where she heads up a participatory research group that brings performance to school children and to teacher training in both public and private schools in São Paulo and throughout Brazil. So you can see why I'm so honored to be up here with these folks. Let's give them a big round of applause. Now, we're going to kick off this conversation, as is appropriate for Performing the World, with a performance. We're going to see 3 short scenes and 2 songs from the Castillo Theater's work in progress, Playing with Heiner Muller. The texts are by Heiner Muller, and the songs are by Fred Newman, Castillo's artistic director emeritus and playwright in residence. Now, Castillo has been producing the works of Muller, the late East German pioneer of post-dramatic theater, since the 1980s. Muller was a communist whose work was often attacked and sometimes banned by the communist East German government. What has attracted us at Castillo to Muller over the years is not only his beautiful poetic language and his challenges to theatrical convention. What we find so compelling in his work is that while Muller never gave up his support for the poor and the oppressed, for revolutionary change, he always looked at history, including the history of the socialist revolutions of the 20th century, with unblinking eyes. He wrote what he saw and he felt, not what those in authority would have liked to see on stage. So watching Muller is a disturbing experience, especially for progressives. It is provocative by its honesty. What we're going to see now will raise many political, artistic, developmental issues and questions that we'll be asking our panel to not so much respond to the content, although of course people can respond whatever way they want, but to build on this performance, to share and unpack, as I said, our differences, our theoretical differences in terms of why we do what we do and how that impacts on what we do, and then what we do, how that impacts on why we do it. And what we're about to see very specifically is part of a larger performance of a montage of Muller's work called Playing with Heiner Muller. It takes different pieces from his body of 40 years of writing that will open at Castillo on November 5th. If you want to see more of it, there are open rehearsals being held back at the All-Stars headquarters tonight at 7:30, which you're all invited to. It's a rehearsal that you're going to see, and what you'll see is a work in progress under the direction of Gabrielle L. Kurlander. As some of you know, Gabrielle is the president and CEO of the All-Stars Project and an executive producer of Performing the World. She's also an actress who has appeared in many Castillo productions over the last 20 years and a director who's done a number of very interesting and wonderful productions of Muller, including last year's The Task, which was very popular. The cast you're about to see are all veterans of The Task. They are Keldrick Crowder, Fulton Hodges, Ava Jenkins, Selena Lewis, and John Rankin III. So the relationship between theory and practice is often discussed at conferences. And we're going to respond to that one and play with that today. At Castillo, the relationship often is considered as a relationship between practice and practice. So beware. Please welcome the director and cast of Playing with Heiner Muller.
Good morning, Performing the World, and good morning to our distinguished panelists. So nice to have you here and watching our kind of part of our rehearsal. We're going to perform to you some of the scenes that we're going to be doing. Our show opens in about 5 weeks, so we're very much early-ish in our rehearsal process. I've chosen about 17 scenes from 9 Muller plays for this production of Playing with Heine Muller, along with 11 songs that were written by Fred Newman for Castillo's production of Muller's work over the last 19 years. The first piece we're going to be performing is called Heart Piece. It's a play. It's a short play by Heine Muller, performed by Ava Jenkins and Selenia Lewis.
May I put my heart at your feet?
As long as you don't soil my floor.
My heart is pure.
We'll see to that.
I can't get it out.
You'd like me to help you?
If you don't mind.
It's my pleasure. I too can't get it out. I'll take it out by surgery. What do I have a penknife for? We'll get this in a minute. To work and not despair. Well, it's done. But this is a brick. Your heart is a brick.
But it beats only for you.
Our next scene is called The Homecoming. It is from Heine Muller's last play, Germania 3, Ghosts at Dead Man. As the scene opens, a prisoner who is a German Jewish communist returns home after spending 12 years in a concentration camp to find a Russian soldier raping his wife. The song was written by Fred Newman. The scene is performed by the ensemble.
I shouldn't have hit you as hard as that, should I?
I've spent 12 long years in Auschwitz and Buchenwald, and finally you Russians came through. I know you must fuck, and it's just my hard luck. It's my wife who you found in the sack. But surely, red brother, if you fucked my own mother, you know goddamn well I'll pay you back.
I ask you to forgive me, comrade. I shouldn't have hit you as hard as that, should I? We are communists. You have liberated us. But my wife is my wife. Maybe she enjoyed it after all. 12 years without a man. Property equals theft, doesn't it? How long has it been since you had a woman? With me, it is 12 years. You don't know what it's like. 12 years in a camp. How would you know? You are from the Soviet Union. Who would believe the Nazi propaganda? The hunger and bone-breaking work. In the quarry, he who doesn't get up again is dead. Or at the ovens. In the end, we ourselves had to write the lists of those who went in the ovens. The Jews were first. I shouldn't have hit you as hard as that, should I? The blood. 4 days of walking through bombarded countryside, rejoicing in your gut at each bombed building. They've gotten what they asked for, haven't they? Are you still listening? I felt sorry for the horses at Elbe River, near Magdeburg, where a column of refugees had been shot to bits. And a white arm reaching out of the water for a dead baby as it drifted down by the stream. He's dead, isn't he? Arise, you prisoners of starvation! Arise, you wretched of the earth! For justice thunders condemnation!
To close our presentation, we will present another song written by Fred Newman for a production of one of Muller's most famous plays, Hamlet Machine. And the lyrics are inspired by Muller's text. It's sung by the ensemble, who are getting into their costumes, so now I'm stalling for time. Here they come. It's called lugging.
Thank you, cast and director of Playing with Heiner Mueller. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that the panel all feels free to interrupt each other, to build on each other, to have a real conversation. It's not just we're going to go down the line necessarily and respond in a conventional panel manner. But I did think it would be interesting to start with each of you sharing a response. It could be cognitive or critical, it could be emotional, it could be both, to the performance you've just seen. And maybe in that response, reflect a little on how your response is related to your theories or theories of social change in art. And there are microphones. Pass that one down, so whoever wants to.
I have nothing but praise for the performers, for the director. A lot of criticism of Heiner Mueller. I mean, he's a brilliant playwright. But us anarchists are more optimistic than the communists and the socialists around us. In fact, anarchism is nothing but optimism. And pacifist anarchism is sort of an epitome of optimism. So for my point of view, most of Heiner Mueller is too cynical, too sad, too pessimistic. On the other hand, we don't always do optimistic plays. We're always looking for plays that show how good it can be rather than how bad it is. Though sometimes, as when we do The Brig, we show how bad it is. But mostly I think that theater should strive to show how good it could be.
In the work that I do with Street Spirits Theater Company, we never show the good stuff. We show situations as black and dark as we can make them, and then we ask the audience to change it. And doing that over many years, we've come to understand something, and it's something I want you to reflect on as an audience, that as you watched those scenes, for each of us, it was a different experience. Each of us saw a different scene because our focus was in a different way. Our past experience, our life experience informed it in a different way. And so there were moments that we pulled out. I think of this young man lying by the body of a person he had just killed, and his wife is over on the other side. For some people, they would see the oppression of the Jewish people at the end of the Second World War. For others, they would see the oppression of a woman left alone after having been assaulted. And for still others, they would see the violence. Each of us takes from it what we choose to take from it, or what our personal life experience creates for us or focuses on for us. There's that belief that we do not communicate what we want to communicate directly, and we do not hear what we want to hear directly. There is a space between, and that's where things happen, is in that space between. I put out what I think or what I believe is going to represent something, and the people hearing it hear it in their own way and in their own interpretation.
When I am an audience member to performances, my overwhelming emotive response is I feel incredibly given to. I feel that I am receiving and participating in creating a gift. And I'm very rarely as close. So there was a particular experience to be so close to the actors. And I don't know, it's that they can do that. So my experience is that, you know, when you're, these illusions, the famous one of the one that's a woman or a vase. I don't know if people know that. Sometimes you see it as a woman's face, a silhouette, and sometimes you see it as a vase. And that's my experience of watching performance. So I go in and out of, the content of it, and then I'm completely switched to the activity of it, and that those people can do that. So it was amazing. It was sad, beautiful, joyous, and in some funny way, no more so than the Johns Hopkins nurses this morning, for those people who were there, who were moving their arms. The human capacity to do that is, to add to what Andrew was saying, another way to experience it.
Performance art, happenings, pop art, abstract expressionism, are these different periods that I have lived through here in America. And having spent a lot of time in Nigeria and South Africa and Liberia, it is absolutely necessary to abstract what you are saying. And if you hate the leader of the country, you gotta, in some sort of way, abstract that leader so he is unrecognizable and everyone in the audience knows who you're talking about, but the leader could send his henchmen there and they would not know that that's who they're talking about. Practice for me in the American theater came out of an unbelievable study of the different movements here. These different movements from the radical left to the communists, nationalists, and to the civil rights movement, and putting that common denominator and finding that common denominator in theater, and then giving it back to the people from which it came. And that is how how I relate. I would immediately guess or take a chance on saying Heinrich Mueller a lot of times had to be imprisoned, jailed, or otherwise, because he actually said things that the leaders of his country did not believe in, and so they were in power, so it could either kill him, hang him, or otherwise. You know, we see it in the dictatorship countries. Now, in terms of performance art and what we're trying to talk about here today, the theory of all that is very cool, but what are we doing in the practice? How are we actually doing it is what I hope we will get into today. That's it.
Well, when I look at this and I see the suffering, the miseries, I think, well, I'm moved by this, but I reflect about schools and I think, how can somebody start Monday classes thinking about teaching, digest the system, language, math, and not reflect and not bring to class the realities of people who suffer? How can we leave outside the schools, the sufferings, the feelings that people have, the situations they live? And that's why the projects we deal with, they try to bring performance to the classroom so that what we teach can be connected to what we do in life, to how we live, how our lives are lived. And these things are not just part of theater or going out to understand reality, but we understand reality within schools. And within schools, we deal with the reality that is outside schools. So I see these sufferings. But I also think, like Judith, we have to think about ways of transforming this. And I think that school is still a place where we can reflect and find ways.
I just want to add one quick thought, and that is that, just inspired by what Woody had to say here just a moment ago, we can look at a piece of theater and see how terrible something is and see how people are suffering. It's not enough. We have to somehow, through our theater, get across to an audience, get across to people, something that will inspire them to do something about it. Just saying it's terrible isn't enough. What are you going to do about it?
Sweet brevity. When our hospital was open, we all lived on top of each other. Huge numbers of people, unmedicated. And what an adorable wellness skit that was. I'm thinking, you know, normally you go out here, you have a chart for diet. And I just thought, what I like about performance is if we combine what you all are saying with what we saw here, how nice it would be to present the difficulties so briefly. Okay? Let's get involved in wellness, okay? And typically the male choosing ideology over romance and ideology failing the male. And so, with just a brief moment, when we were living on top of each other, a brief moment like that could kick off a much longer direction of performance for solutions. And that's what, but I wasn't seeing a negativity so much as a communication using brevity. And then what?
And then what is a good question to build on. I was hoping you could all respond to the question now, why performance? Some of you are psychologists, some of you are educators, a number of you are theater artists. The question is, did you come to performance theoretically, personally, through your practice, through what combination? What brought you to working in performance as a way of impacting on the world?
was destined to be a performer. My mother was an ambitious actress in Germany in the 20s, late 20s, and her idol was Erwin Piscator, whom I later studied with not far from here at the dramatic workshop at the New School. You may not know who Piscator was, but I bet you know who Bertolt Brecht was. And Bertolt Brecht and Piscator worked together, Brecht as playwright and Piscator as director and as inspiration. Soon everybody will know about Piscator because I've just written a book about him that's going to be published, and then you'll know all about him. And he taught us that if we want to make theater, we have to have something to say, and that we had to know what it was that we wanted to say, so that we could say it clearly, so that we could say it passionately, and so that we could say it truthfully. And so each of us who was a student there had to make a decision about what we had to say that gave us the privilege of standing in the middle there, in the light, and with everybody else in the dark, and as it were saying to everybody else, you be quiet and listen to me. If I want you to listen to me, I have to have something to say, or else it's just sheer egotistical bullshit, and we don't want that in the theater.
Well, I chose to be a performer because I wanted something. I want peace and justice and care, and I'm going to bust my ass to do it.
Why performance? A couple of days after high school in Detroit, I saw a movie called The Defiant Ones with Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis, who I read just passed. And I had never seen black artists communicate with such passion, such beauty and truth. And where did he find that truth? He found that truth in studying with the American Negro Theater, out of the American Negro Theater with Paul Mann, out of Paul Mann with Lloyd Richards, and a lot of work with Strasberg in the Actors Studio. So I wanted to communicate like that. Being library taught, having read almost every play in that small Detroit Public Library. How do you communicate what's on paper? Whether you like Death of a Salesman or don't like it, how do you communicate and do that so people will listen? Acting is doing, and you gotta find the truth in that doing. So that was my journey. And in that journey, it cooperated who I was. In that journey, it sort of told me there's a stereotype and there's a real type. And people turn off of the stereotype and they look at the humanness in what you're doing. No matter what it is, if the truth is there, that truth will translate and they have to listen. And ironically, one of the early plays that I did back then was a play called The Connection by Jack Gelber that was first done at the Living Theater. And Judith, I played Sam at all of the age of 19. So I had to find somehow that truth of drug addiction. So in Detroit, after reading and interpreting Stanislavski, I went down in the Bowery and stayed overnight with the junkies and all that, and imitated them. but I misinterpreted. But I did go further than any actor in Detroit of my color. So when I came to New York, both Lloyd Richards and Paul Mann said, no, that's not it. Go further, go further, go further. And by going further, I was able to communicate much better. By going further, I was able to direct much better. I could find the truth in those plays, whether it's Mueller or Tennessee Williams or Mary Baraka or Jack Gelman.
Why performance? Because it's the human condition that we, on the one hand, have no choice. We are always performing. And on the other hand, we can choose to perform. I don't think my wonderful dog has that choice. This life is simpler. Why performance? Because creativity of human beings is so stunted. And the possibilities of continuously creating our lives and the world in which we live and how we get along and what we use and what we care about is infinite. Why performance? Because we're all lugging around heavyweight brains.
What are you performing right now? Think about it. You're an audience. And part of that is an internal set of rules about what an audience is, about what an audience member is. When we talk about performance, for a lot of people, that's telling somebody something. It's getting up here and saying, this is, look at this, listen to this. There's something more there. And that is what if, and I'm a big fan of what if. What if I don't tell you something? What if I ask you something? What if I show you a problem and say, okay, now what are you going to do about it? How are you going to change it? How can you work it out in a good way? And suddenly, seeing something that is challenging is not just, look at this, see how bad this is, or how good this is, or how much of a puzzle this is, but how can we deal with it? How can we work it out in a good way? That's the power of performance, and that's what took me to the work that I do.
Well, I'm a teacher and a researcher. How could I work with performance? Well, I wanted to transform the world. I didn't want to simply write books or publish papers or write thesis dissertations. I want to change the world, and performance was a way. We want to collaborate. We want to do collaborative research, participatory research. How could we do that? We found a way through performance, through understanding that we had to go beyond who we were and the way we were and acting the way we were. And performance gave us some ways of doing that. I know now that I'm performing all the time, and now I'm performing because that's not the role I'm used to. But I know that in a way, whenever we work with the groups, with the researchers, the teachers, the principals in schools, and we teach them to perform, and they have to leave their stereotype, and they can do whatever it is that we are asking to be performed or which they want to perform, they can go beyond, and they do things that in the beginning they thought were impossible. When I see the kids we work with, dreaming that they are in Paris, doing things that they would never at that moment be able to do, I can see that performance is a way to go beyond. And we can do this in education, in the classroom. Because many times it's difficult for kids to think that they are going to have theater classes or they will have this opportunity. So why not do this inside their own classrooms? That's what we're trying to do.
Performance is being used in a number of ways up here today. performance on stage in front of people, and there's a number of people referring to performance in everyday life. Are those the same? Are they different? How are they different? That's one of the questions we might want to bat around. Patch, you have written in your books that you'd made a decision early in life to perform. And clearly you are performing all the time in daily life. How did you come to that decision, and what is it like to live your life consciously performing?
I think once you want, desire, have the desire.
You don't forget to use your mic. You have a big voice.
Once you have desire, and it's not a masturbation, that you actually want it, and it's for me, a driving force, then clearly I wanted in every moment to choose the best possible performance in that moment with those circumstances, to put my intentions forward. I wanted to be clear with my intentions. I will love life. I will love people. And the performance with improvisation brought more instant results and a constant feedback reinforcement that you can get what you want if you work for it through performance.
I think performance is just a very high form of communication. And the highest form of that communication is interaction with everybody in the room. Everybody in the room is a performer. You're all performers, not just those of us up here that have dedicated ourselves to performing every moment of our lives and always being performers. You're also always performers. And our job who work in the arts is to bring that out. Julian Beck used to say, everyone is a sublime artist. And those of us that work in the arts are obligated to bring out the sublime artist in everybody.
I think just consider this for a moment. If you accept the premise that we are all of us performing every minute of the day at all times, why not choose the performance that you want?
Well, I think since I do plays, and the characters in those plays are, if they're identifiable to characters or people I knew in life, how do I bring them and show them to you in a truthful and beautiful and artistic way? The way if I didn't love them, I should not bring them to you. And that, I think, is how I direct plays. When I was acting, that's what I hoped to do. When I brought a character on stage, now do I take that character off stage and bring him down among you and relate to you one-on-one with that character? I don't think so. Do I bring that play, whether it is for colored girls or what the wine sellers buy, now whether you are one of those characters in one of those plays, then somehow an artist knows how to relate to you. You know, what I always say, if you're trained well as an artist, if you are knowledgeable of literature, you are a character out of Hemingway, you're a character out of Faulkner, and we identify with that because that is the literature we know, and we know how to project you from day one to the end. Just give you an example. I was talking to someone this morning over breakfast, and she was right out of Carson McCullough. And I don't think she knew it, but that's how I related to her. I related to her as a heart as a lonely hunter, and that's how I saw her. So, the unfairness, I think, and I'll be brief with this, is if you're a non-artist, and you are married to an artist, or you're with an artist, you're going to have a hard time, okay? Because that artist, if you start to say, oh, I just got in from work, that artist can project that conversation to the end, and either that artist wants to hear it, or he doesn't want to hear it. And that's why silences break in, grunts, yeah, because they know where it's going. And so that's the difficulties in bringing your performance off stage and into your life. Most of us have unbelievable communication, difficulties communicating with our kids. They're in and I always tell this story, right? This is amazing. So I take this young brother I'm mentoring to the Apollo to see the Drifters, you know, and the OJs, and they're up on stage, man, in Four Tops, they're doing it. This young brother is snoring. Because he's into hip hop. He's into, you know, you gotta move. He's into P. Diddy, he's into Mary J. Blige, he's into Snoop Dogg. You gotta do all that, you know. But this group was singing up on the roof, you know. he's gone, you know. So anyway, no, I don't think, I think the difficulty is bringing that stuff off stage and into your life.
Lois, quick question for you. You're the only psychologist up here on the panel.
I'm not, and I'm not a real one.
Right. Well, if you could maybe break that down and also, I mean, because your approach to psychology is
something, call myself a developmentalist or an activityist. What I'm interested in doing and helping others do is develop and grow and learn and create new things that collectively a small group, a large group, or the entire world agrees that it would be good to have. And most of psychology counters that by its very ontology, if you will, what it takes to be psychology, which is this study of individuals who bump up against each other, as opposed to the social unit or the totality, that we actually live our lives together. And some of those ways that we act that out are not only counter to it, but don't even take that into consideration. So one of what I found, and I mean, I began studying linguistics, language. I had a passion about what is this thing we do called speaking, and how come some of us are taken to be very good at it, and for some of us it comes really easy, and for others it's extremely difficult. We often feel like we have nothing to say. And what's the relationship of that to our culture, how we're socialized to it, and also what we're thinking and feeling? What is that relationship between thinking, feeling, and speaking or writing? And then psychology, and I found both of them, that their units of study were not to my liking, if you will, especially as I became more interested and concerned with using the knowledge that I had gained as a professional in helping people to grow and develop and transform their lives. And performance came to us, and there's so many things. When I'm speaking in my voice, but I'm speaking for discoveries that Fred Newman and I made together, things that I learned from Newman about philosophizing and about how to understand the development of science and the relationship between theory and practice, and then putting that together with my particular background. I'm speaking in my voice, but for many of the things that we agree on. So the question that you raised at the beginning about, given your theory, how do you understand theory and practice? For us, performance came very late. We didn't have a theory of performance and then begin social therapy or the All-Stars work or any of the things, or performing the world, but rather had a practice that was based on some notion of ensemble creativity, mundane creativity, that people working together can create something. And there was performance, literally. I mean, for us, it came through Fred Newman's practical work in the theater and my understanding and study of Vygotsky and how he discussed children's play as performing a head taller. And you sort of put those together, and now we have a sophisticated articulation of it, but practice led.
Now, Fernanda, let's build on that, because Lois mentioned Vygotsky, and we're dealing with theory. And maybe you could tell us a little something about you growing up, because I know you said that as a young woman who wanted to change the world, you read Marx and you read Ferrer, and then when you read Vygotsky, Marx and Ferrer and all those folks gave you good ideas, but in Vygotsky you saw how to. Why? What is it about his theory that it...
Yeah, I am a linguist also, and as Lois said, we tend to focus on language too much. And when reading Marx and Freire, we saw practice, we saw reality, but we still couldn't find ways of linking these things. But Vygotsky says that the role of language is very important in transforming realities and going beyond. So how can we see this? We saw in Vygotsky the concept of zone of proximal development, of working beyond who you are, doing more than you can, and then you can do it. You do with the others, and then you do beyond yourself. This concept created for us the idea that doing research did not need to be an isolated thing. We could do it with other people, that we could act in the classroom with the student, that we could act at the schools, the principals, the coordinators, the teachers, the students, the parents, the community around could be all together, creating a new reality. And this was very important for us, because as a theory, it's good, but it's more than that. It's great because we can see it happening and we find ways. Lois mentioned the concept of play, and she has, in her last book, discussed the different types of play that there are. And we work with these things, and we find ways of creating what we call the little house, how we act in everyday life, how we deal with the concept. We also work with the concept of double movement that Vygotsky brings to us, that we depart from both everyday concepts people have and scientific concepts. And because we put these two together, we create a new environment, a possibility of going beyond the simple scientific understanding of life or the everyday understanding. We do and we act with more emphasis on how to live in a better way. And then, of course, we also base our ideas on values. And what are the values that we develop together? Then we come to the idea of our intentions, our dreams, our desires. And when we think about this, we can see the world changing, because we put together the concept of zone of proximal development, of values, and also of double movement. That's how we act, and that's what has helped us do our research.
All right. Now, here we might be opening a can of worms, but you used the word intention. And Pat earlier talked about you know, making a decision that for a reason, an intended reason. And I know that Lois, you have some challenges to this whole notion of that intentionality is what drives us. So maybe you all could unpack that a little bit.
Okay, I mentioned wanting. I chose at 18 to make myself an instrument for peace and justice and care. And I knew that a lot of what I had was time, being awake. What do I do with being awake? I can choose in every waking moment to be the exact me that I feel best expresses an effort towards peace and justice and care. And I can say from that, labeling what I did, living from intention, that I said, well, I can be peace. I can be a loving human being to all people. And then I can say, I will be a loving person to all people. And so there was wanting led to intention, acting from intention.
And then that led to action. Is that always the sequence? Wanting, intention, to action?
Yeah. Wanting. I can't imagine an intention that was acted on that wasn't wanted.
Searching.
Searching.
For identity.
Mm-hmm.
Making the identity.
Well.
No. The identity is already out there. The identity is already out there. You just got to find that identity and identify with it.
Yeah. And Woodie, relative to your work, in a way, your life's work has been providing a context and support for an African-American theater, a black theater, to emerge in America. Obviously, the identity of being black was out there before. What's that search look like in terms of the work you did?
That search is really looking for brothers kindred, kindred spirits, people who really speak in the same language that you speak in. And you notice it with All-Stars. You found that identity in Mueller, and he's German. He's not here. You know, in the black community, that identity was found in great leaders of the past, whether it's Du Bois, who was a communist, whether it was Richard Wright, whether it was Lorraine Hansberry, or that identity was found with the kind of work the Living Theater was doing. That identity was found in the works that Langston Hughes was doing, Paul Robeson. So you found that identity, but you got to search for it. It might be between the pages of a 500-page book. It might be page 26 of a Marxist-Leninist tract. It might be anywhere, but you find it and you identify with it. And it's a search. It's not, and you can see it in the faces of people you may pass in the streets. You will see it in the face of someone smiling. And that identity is there. You know, whether you're in Paris or Russia, you can look across the room and that person, that identity is there. And you can talk, you can communicate, whether it's in dance, theater, or music.
Can I, just to pick up and perhaps add to what you were saying about search, I'd like to share very important insight that Vygotsky had about search, or it's an insight to us. I think it led his life of practice. He said that the search, when he was trying to, in the 1920s and 30s, to carve a path for psychology that would be coherent with what was hoped to be, that was coherent with the new Soviet Union, and concept, how do you create a new man, a new person, a new human being? And he found the psychologies of behaviorism and psychoanalysis wanting in this. And he said that in creating this new psychology, the search for method, how do we create this? That the search for method was both the tool and the result. That you could not use the old tools, the old understandings the old identifications, if you wanted to create something new, that you had to create the tool with which you would discover whatever you wanted to discover simultaneous with the results. So it's an entirely new conception and practice of method, which to me is very much what we do from the time we're born to the time we're about 2 or 3 years old. We do, act, respond without knowing anything. We are not intentionally searching for a method, but I think that's what babies do. And so performance is a way to get out of the knowing. For me, I understand it as a growthful thing people do together, because we're put in a position when we're performing intentionally on a stage or in a classroom, we're put in the position to create with others without knowing what we're doing. And so we were discussing last night whether, I mean, Patch and I were having a lovely disagreement about intentions, and about whys and about explanations. And so intentions to me are very highly overrated.
All right. Now, we're very tight on time. Obviously, when you have such a brilliant and creative group of people, we could talk all day, and I think it would be very interesting. I just want to do a rapid fire thing like on a television show, because we've come up with 2 ideas here: searching and performance. What's the relationship? And say it in 1 to 3 sentences. The relationship between searching for meaning, searching for what life is about, and performance.
Every moment is a new search. Every moment is a new discovery. Every moment is a new performance.
Okay, Patch.
I think I became a founder at 18, and I stopped searching and went to work on what I found.
I've never stopped searching, and each time I find it, I try to include it in my art.
Perform your search.
I think we search for ways to find what we want, what we need in our lives in a way that is consistent with what we believe to be right. To the extent that we do that, we find peace and happiness within ourselves. To the extent that we do not, we lose ourselves.
Right on, right.
We can perform. I'm here, I can say we can perform. I could.